The unexpected response. The room was quiet. Only the soft hum of machines and glowing lights filled the space. Inside the medical bay of the Durishi healing vessel, an unconscious human soldier lay still. His chest rose and fell slowly, connected to a stasis pod that kept him alive. His name was Captain Jace Thorne. He had been pulled from the wreckage of a human scout ship after a deep space battle. The other crew members were gone. He was the only survivor. The alien team that found him wanted to let him die. But Rila, the young Durishi nurse, had asked for one chance. She didn't know why. She just felt something. Rila moved carefully through the chamber. Her silver-blue skin shimmered under the soft light, and her long fingers carried a small bowl of warm nutrient gel. Her job was simple: clean and monitor the human's body while he healed. She had never touched a human before. They were strange to her people, too warm, too loud, too emotional. But this one was still quiet, scarred. She gently pulled back the blanket from his chest. His skin was rough, tanned from sun exposure. She took a cloth, dipped it in the gel, and wiped along his shoulder. The warmth of his skin surprised her. She had expected cold. She moved slowly, wiping along his arms, his neck, and down his chest. The machines beeped softly. Normal readings. No signs of waking. As she lifted the blanket further to continue cleaning, her hand froze. Something beneath the blanket had moved, just slightly. A twitch. Then another. Rila's eyes widened. Her fingers trembled. "He's unconscious," she whispered. "He cannot respond." But there it was again, a soft shift beneath the blanket. Alive. Responsive. Rila stepped back, startled. Her heart began to race, a strange feeling for someone trained to control emotion. She looked at the vitals, still steady, still sleeping, but his body had reacted to her touch. In Durishi culture, physical contact had no emotional meaning. They were not a species of affection. Touch was function, not feeling. But the humans, they were different. They connected through it. She slowly stepped forward again, this time wiping around his abdomen, and again, it twitched. But this time it wasn't just movement. A low, almost silent sound left his lips. It was her name. Rila. She froze. Her hand pulled back. Her breath caught. "How does he know my name?" she whispered. She had never spoken to him. Not once. Not aloud. Only in her own mind. And once, in a whisper when she first sat by his bed. "Sleep well, Jace Thorne. I will not let you die." She thought he couldn't hear her. She backed away slowly, her mind spinning. Was this a mistake? Was something wrong with the stasis field? She turned to alert the other medics, but stopped. Something inside her didn't want them to know. Not yet. Rila looked back at the human. His face was calm again, but his lips still moved, softly, repeating her name, like a memory, like a dream. She walked to the edge of the room and sat quietly in the corner, her eyes never leaving his face. And in that silence she asked herself the question no Durishi nurse had ever asked before. What are you doing to me, human? What she didn't see was the glow beneath the skin of his arm. It pulsed once, a soft blue light, then faded. He opened his eyes and spoke her name. The next cycle began like any other. Soft lights rose in the medical chamber. Machines hummed. Air circulated in quiet rhythm. The other patients in the healing wing remained stable, but Rila hadn't slept. She sat in the far corner of the room, her silver-blue fingers wrapped tightly around her own wrist, her eyes fixed on the human soldier, Jace Thorne. She had monitored dozens of patients before, touched many, saved several, but none had ever whispered her name, especially not while unconscious. She approached his bed again. The blanket now covered him neatly. She hadn't told the senior medics about the movement, about the whisper, about the reaction. She told herself it was nothing. A nerve response, a glitch in the pod. Still, she hesitated to touch him again. His breathing was deeper now, stronger, healing faster than expected. Almost too fast. His body responded as if something inside him had awakened. Rila had increased nutrient levels, double-checked neural scans, and reviewed ancient biological reports on humans. But the data showed nothing unusual. Only he was unusual. She stood near him, looking down at his face, scarred, strong-jawed, resting peacefully, and then without a warning, his went golden brown, sharp, alert, back hard, jumping inside her chest. Then again, and then his lips parted. He spoke, one word, soft, certain. Rila. She froze. He was not supposed to know her. He had never seen her, never heard her. Still too weak to lift his arms, he slowly turned his head, his gaze locked onto her. You're real. She swallowed hard. I am your nurse, she said flatly. You were injured in a crash. You are safe. He smiled faintly. I heard you. Every time you sat near me. Her voice shook. You were unconscious. Your brain was in neural rest. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them again. Still heard you in dreams. A pause, long and still. Then he asked quietly, You were the one cleaning me, weren't you? Her breath caught. She looked away. I was assigned your care, she answered. It was routine. Felt like more than that. She turned sharply, toward the monitors. You should not be awake yet. I will notify the medical chief. But as she reached for the console, his voice stopped her again. Please don't. She didn't move, only listened. He continued. I don't know why, but I feel like I've known you longer than this room, longer than this war. Rila's hand hovered over the screen, but she didn't touch it. Instead, she turned back to him. Something in his eyes softened her, disarmed her. It wasn't just the way he spoke her name, it was the way he meant it. That night, alone in her quarters, she replayed the moment again and again. The way he looked at her, the way he said she was real, the way her own body had reacted. Warmth in her chest, strange thoughts in her mind. She accessed the deep archive. Not the medical one, the forbidden one. Ancient Dureshi records sealed long ago. And there, buried under warnings and broken data, she found it. Subject: Early human Dureshi. Interlink patterns, emotional transference, memory merging, bond ignition recorded through physical caretaking. She stared at the old symbols in disbelief. It had happened before, once, and it had been erased. Back in the chamber, Jace slept peacefully. But under the skin of his arm, the soft glow returned. This time it spread, like a slow fire beginning to wake. When the human touched her hand, the next morning arrived with heavy silence, not the usual peace of healing chambers. This silence was thick, filled with something waiting and watching. Rila entered slowly, keeping her gaze on the human. Captain? Jace Thorne was sitting up now, arms resting at his sides, connected to only one vital tube. The machines had adjusted to his rapidly stabilizing condition, something even the medical overseer couldn't explain. His body's responding to our treatment like it was made for it, one doctor had said. But Rila knew better. It wasn't the treatment, it was the bond. She approached quietly, trying to keep her heartbeat calm. But something in her chest fluttered again, the same feeling she had the day he spoke her name. She hated that feeling, not because it hurt, but because it felt good. Morning, Jace said, his voice still low but clearer. You should be resting. Rila replied. He smiled faintly. I've done enough of that. She ran a scan over his body. No pain spikes, no fever, no instability, everything. Perfect. Too perfect. As she reached to adjust the small support brace near his shoulder, his hand moved. Gently, instinctively. He touched hers. Just fingers. Nothing more. But the moment their skin met, everything changed. A spark. Not visual, not fire. Something deep inside both of them stirred. Rila gasped softly, pulling her hand away, but the warmth remained. It spread up her arm, into her chest, behind her eyes. She stumbled back, confused, shocked, terrified. "What did you feel just now?" she asked. Jace looked confused. "Comfort," he said. "Like you were familiar." She turned away, breathing fast. She gripped the console with trembling hands. Her skin still tingled from the touch. Not pain, not infection, something older. She left the chamber quickly and walked straight to the AI archive wing. There, in the deep medical logs, she searched for the phrase now burning in her mind. Cross-species energy feedback upon touch. Only one result came up. A file labeled, "The Bond That Nearly Broke a Galaxy." She opened it, 1,000 years ago. A human pilot crashed on a Durashi moon. A healer touched him while stabilizing his heart. Their bodies began to synchronize. Her skin glowed. His mind opened. Their thoughts blended, and together they triggered a forgotten biological response in both species. They called it the merge pulse. The Durashi elders sealed the records, called it a mistake, an emotional infection, something to be traced. Rila stared at the file. Her heart raced, her fingers trembled, and she whispered, "It's happening again." Later that night, she returned to Jace's chamber. He was awake, sitting at the edge of his bed, quiet, waiting. "Rila," he said, standing slowly. "What's happening to me?" She looked into his eyes, saw warmth, saw fear, and something more, dangerous hope. She stepped closer, paused, then extended her hand. He reached for it. Fingers touched again, and this time, the light glowed between them, blue, alive, ancient. Jace's eyes widened. Rila whispered, "You're not just healing, you're connecting." Behind them, a small wall panel flickered, an old sensor untouched in decades. It lit up with two symbols, one for him, one for her, and in between them, a pulse of light. Far above the chamber, in the highest level of the ship, the elder medics gathered. They had felt the same pulse in the walls. One whispered, "It has begun again." Another replied, "Then we must stop it, before they awaken the old flame." The forbidden bond, the glow between their hands faded slowly. But something had been awakened, not just in the air, not just in the walls of the ship, but inside them, deep inside. Rila sat in her chamber long after her shift ended, lights dimmed, eyes fixed on the small glowing mark on her palm. It hadn't gone away. It shimmered, faint but constant, exactly where Jace had touched her. The merge pulse. She whispered the ancient term she'd found buried in the archives, a bond once thought myth, a mistake in the eyes of her people. But now it was real. She accessed the forbidden scrolls again, this time bypassing security. One file was older than the rest, labeled only the one flame. She opened it. What she saw chilled her. Images of a human and a Durashi, standing hand in hand as an energy field bloomed around them, symbols twisted in the air. Technology bloomed where nothing lived. Their bond had turned dead land into light, but then chaos, warships, fire, fear. The Durashi Council blamed the merge, called it unnatural, dangerous. The bond was erased from public knowledge. The lovers vanished. Or worse, silenced. And now it was happening again. To her. Meanwhile, in his room, Jace was dreaming. Only, the dreams didn't feel like his. He stood, in places he'd never seen. He spoke words in languages he didn't know. He saw Rila beside him, not in a lab coat but in ancient Durashi robes, glowing with light. "We've done this before," her voice said in the dream. And we failed. He woke with a sharp gasp, his skin damp, his breath short, but his heart racing with recognition. He didn't just feel close to her. He felt remembered. The next morning, Rila came to him, not as a nurse, but as someone with secrets. "We need to talk," she said. He nodded. They sat beside the medical bed, facing each other. "There's something ancient between us," Rila began, "something I'm not allowed to speak of." "I've seen it," Jace replied. "In my sleep." She froze. "You remember?" "I don't know how," he said. "But they're not just dreams. They're echoes." Rila's voice turned softer. "It's not just memory. It's inheritance." She showed him her hand, the glowing mark. He pulled back his sleeve. He had one too. Same shape, same pulse, same flame. They stared at each other, neither speaking. Because what could they say? They hadn't chosen this. And yet, it felt destined. Suddenly, an alarm sounded through the chamber. But it wasn't medical. It came from the council tower above. "All staff report to primary hall. Emergency declaration. Subject, code red merge activation." Rila's blood ran cold. They know. The doors burst open. Guards entered. "Rila of Velix," the commander said. "You are to be separated from the human immediately." She stood protectively in front of Jace. "No, this is not a request." Jace stood too, swaying slightly, on his feet, but strong enough to face them. "You'll have to go through me," he said. One of the guards raised a pulse spear. "Stand down." But before they could strike, the marks on Jace and Rila's hands lit up, blinding bright. The guards stumbled back, shielding their eyes. The walls trembled. Lights flickered. And then, everything went still. Jace looked at her, stunned. "You felt that?" Rila nodded slowly. "We're not just bonded, Jace. We're activated." Far away in the galaxy's shadowed corners, an old satellite long thought dead blinked awake. It read the same pattern, same signal, the flame code, and it sent a message to a place no one dared mention. It has returned. The pulse that united them, the city didn't sleep that cycle. Not after the light, not after the pulse, not after the human and the nurse stood in front of the royal guards and lit up the chamber like a second sun. Rila had been moved to an isolated chamber, not a prison, not yet. But her access was cut, her status stripped, her voice silenced. Still, she felt stronger, not weaker, because for the first time in her life, she was connected, and the connection pulsed inside her skin like a second heartbeat. Jace, meanwhile, was confined to his medical room, but the walls responded to him now. Thicko. Lights followed his gaze. Doors shifted slightly when he stood near, as if the ship itself remembered him. Late that night, as Rila lay in silence, the mark on her hand began to glow. She sat up, startled. It wasn't just her hand this time, it was her spine, her eyes, her breath. She wasn't overheating. She was activating. Across the hall, Jace felt it too, a sharp warmth in his chest. He stood, and in that exact moment, without touching anything, the door opened for him. He stepped out. No guards stopped him, not because they were asleep, but because they were all frozen, eyes wide, staring at the same thing, the walls of the corridor glowing with ancient symbols, symbols no one had seen in centuries, symbols from the Flame Age. Jace didn't run. He walked slowly. His steps triggered the floor to light up, one by one, like a path, and, at the end of it, Rila, also walking, also glowing, also unafraid. They met in the middle of the corridor. No words spoken, just hands raised, palms pressed together, and when they touched, the pulse returned. But this time, It didn't stay between them. It spread, first into the floor, then the walls, then the power grid. The ship shuddered, not in fear, but in memory. Lights exploded, crystals hummed, old tech, dead for centuries, sparked back to life. All across, the ship screens lit up with the same phrase. Flame core recognized. Bond integrity. True. Next phase. Initiate. In the council tower, alarms blared, elders shouted, and one ancient Dereshi, nearly forgotten by time, stood and whispered, "They did it. They woke the core." Back in the corridor, Rila and Jace held hands as the energy pulsed around them, and then a vision came. Not a dream, not a memory, a shared seeing. They stood in a stone chamber with stars above and fire below. Dereshi and humans knelt together around a glowing heart of light. One voice spoke. The bond was never meant to divide. It was made to unify the flame. Then the heart burst. Jace gasped, stepping back. "So that's what this is?" Rila nodded, breathing heavily. "We're not just bonded. We're the spark." Suddenly the floor shook, not from the pulse, but from ships outside. Others had come, not Dereshi, not human, but those who had waited in silence for this bond to reappear. And now, they were here to claim it. Rila looked out the window. Dozens of vessels, dark, ancient, watching. Jace stood beside her. What do they want? Rila's voice turned hollow. They want the pulse, because it can change everything. She turned to him, eyes glowing, mark blazing. We either run, or we finish what the last bond couldn't. Jace took her hand again. No more running. And far beneath the ship, in the oldest part of the archives, a door opened, not because of a code, but because they touched, behind that door, waited something that hadn't spoken in 1,000 years. The flame core, and it was finally awake. The Empire declares them dangerous. The flame had spoken, and the galaxy listened. In the deepest chamber of the Dereshi capital, far from the healing ship where it began, panic spread like infection. The elders stood around a black stone table. Their eyes flickered with fear. The hologram above them showed two figures, a human soldier and a Dereshi healer. Their palms glowed, their bodies pulsed with energy, and ancient systems were waking up all across the stars. They reignited the core, one elder whispered. We sealed it for a reason, said another. They are not bonded, the high voice growled. They are contaminated. Back on the ship, Rila stood at the central window of the flame chamber, watching the stars blink unnaturally. Do you feel that? She asked quietly. Jace nodded. They're watching. Not just them, she added. The universe. The flame between their hands had cooled now, steady like a heartbeat. But beyond the ship, movement stirred. Vessels approached, not just Dereshi, but human warships too. And others, unmarked, cloaked in shadow. Jace narrowed his eyes. It's not just fear, it's interest. The comm system cracked to life. First came the Dereshi voice. By order of the Flame Treaty, the subjects known as Rila of Velex and Captain Jace Thorne are hereby declared unstable, unbound, and a risk to galactic order. Then came the Human Fleet Command. Captain Thorne has broken code by syncing with foreign tech. If he does not return immediately, he will be considered a rogue operative. Jace looked at Rila. So basically, everyone wants us in chains. She smirked softly. Or ashes. In a secret council far off world, the Silent Order convened. Once protectors of ancient truths, now keepers of fear. The bond is not a myth, it is a weapon. If it evolves again, the balance breaks. Then we cut it at the source, the leader whispered. Terminate the bond, terminate the flame. Back in the chamber, Rila pulled up the data. Every system their flame had touched was changing. Dead satellites sparked to life. Old vaults unlocked. Genetic codes rearranged themselves. She turned to Jace. not just waking memory, we're waking possibility. Suddenly the lights dimmed. The flame core glowed red for the first time, then pulsed outward, a burst of pure energy. Across the galaxy, it sent one clear message. The flame chooses them. The declaration was not subtle. It was war. Within hours, an emergency broadcast reached every major system. The bonded pair has activated a classified relic of pre-collapse origin. Their location is compromised. Proceed with containment or elimination. On the ship, Rila received one private message. It wasn't from an elder, not from the council. It was from someone she hadn't heard from in years. Her mother. Run. I saw this before you were born. They will erase you both if you stay. Jace was already preparing the ship. No more hiding, he said, but not just running either. Rila added. They stared at each other, wounds unspoken, futures unclear. But one thing was certain. The galaxy had made a choice, and now they would too. They didn't run to escape. They ran to awaken what came next. And high above them, at the edge of a dying star, the flame left behind by the first bonded pair stirred one final time. A voice echoed across the systems. You erased the first bond, but you cannot erase the need to connect. They called it a mistake. The universe called it evolution. The galaxy stood on the edge of silence. Ships from every quadrant surrounded the system where the bonded pair had last been seen. They came not to negotiate, not to understand, but to contain or destroy. Inside the heart of the flame carrier, Rila and Jace floated above the core they had awakened. Its light pulsed with calm power, no longer chaotic, but centered, like a heartbeat between them. Around them, symbols from long-forgotten languages shimmered. Across the walls, the ship was no longer just metal. It was alive, awake, remembering. Jace looked at her. We don't have to do this. Yes, Rila said softly. We do. They'll hunt us. They already are. They'll fear what this bond means. They should. She stepped closer. Because it means we don't need them to approve it. The console lit up beneath their feet, not with commands but with choices. One path, power down the core, go dark, disappear forever, live small, safe, alone. The other, release the signal, let the flame burn beyond the stars, expose the truth, inspire others, or ignite war. Jace reached toward the first option, safety, but Rila placed her hand on his. No. He looked at her, really looked, and he understood. This wasn't just about them. This was about what they represented. They weren't a weapon. They were a bridge. Across the galaxy, children with marks on their hands stirred in their sleep. Old tech in museums powered on for the first time in centuries. People who had never met each other suddenly dreamed of the same flame. New Age was asking to begin, but it needed a signal. Rila and Jace joined hands, spoke no words. They simply opened themselves to the pulse one last time. The ship responded instantly, light bursting from its core in all directions. The beam passed through warships, satellites, outposts, and it did not burn. It revealed. Leaders who had come to destroy saw visions of past bonds, of future unions, of children born not from war, but from understanding. The flame message echoed across all systems. This was never evolution of species. It was the evolution of choice, of trust, of love, and love will always rise again. Rila turned to Jace, tears in her eyes. I don't think we'll be remembered as heroes. No, Jace said. We'll be remembered as the spark. And when the flame finally dimmed, there was no body, no wreckage, no ruin, only a story, a rumor, a memory, passed from world to world. They called it a mistake, but the universe called it evolution. The end.